Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. That chant is very traditional and it is paying homage, paying utmost respect, and really even worship to the Buddha, and chanted 3 times, and very, very appropriate to always understand anything that is wise or liberating or useful, uplifting. All these teachings come directly from the Buddha. And we're wending our way through this very beautiful sutta, the Mangala Sutta, that's in an old part of the Pali Canon in the Sutta Nipata. It's in book 2 and it's sutta number 4, Sutta Nipata 2:4. And this is where a deva comes to the Buddha and asks about living a good life. What does that look like? What is the source of happiness? What is the source of peace? And then the Buddha gives this beautiful answer, starting really from describing more of the external aspects of one's life and moving to the more internal. And another trajectory in the sutta is this movement from more coarse and more obvious aspects of life to more and more refined, which is the trajectory of meditation. It's the trajectory of the spiritual life. And another way to look at this sutta is through the lens of the Eightfold Noble Path, because the sutta really gives examples and illustrations of many aspects of the Eightfold Noble Path, beginning in the very beginning of the Buddha's answer, talking really about right view, knowing what to honor and knowing what direction to head in, and having right intention. And then the Buddha describes other aspects of all of our lives, of in particular, really a lay life, family life, and a work life, where there's a lot of harmony and there's guiding principles, and people are working in a way that's not super stressful and is meaningful, and people are speaking to one another in ways that are kind and thought through and beautiful, which is the right speech and right livelihood part of the Noble Eightfold Path. And that brings us to the 2 verses I'm going to unpack this morning, which are really descriptions of right action, the other part of the moral component of the Noble Eightfold Path: right speech, right action, right livelihood. And right action, you really can't be talking about right action without talking about the precepts. And that's where we'll end up. But we'll start with something that the Buddha usually starts with when he is describing a life that is a spiritual life, and that is generosity. So the first verse we're going to look at today is generosity and a righteous life, offering help to relatives and kin, and acting in ways that leave no blame. So this teaching about generosity, the Buddha speaks so much about generosity, dana in Pali, and the Buddha. The whole talk could be about generosity, so I will try and practice restraint, which is what we're going to talk about very soon. And I will demonstrate it by not going on and on and on about generosity. Uh, but I want to say three quick quotes of the Buddha that I can't not say. And the first is at one point, the Buddha says, this is in the Itivuttaka 26. He says, if beings only knew what I know about generosity, about the fruit of it and the power of it and the beauty of it. If beings, it's so, you can see the Buddha reflecting, gosh, how can I, you know, transfer this? If beings only knew what I knew, they wouldn't let a single meal go by without sharing a bite with someone, with another being. Another another passage, the Buddha, it's in the numerical discourses in the book of threes, sutta number 57. And again, the entire sutta is about giving. And toward the end, the Buddha says, if even if we're throwing out like dishwater after we've washed the dishes, and we have in our heart the intention, may this water be of use to any living beings. We can be generous, we can have generosity in our hearts at almost every turn of our day. And it's an amazing practice. It's incredibly uplifting, and it counters greed directly, and it counters self-focus and selfishness. And lastly, the sutta I want to share is in the numerical discourses in the book of six, Sutta 37, where the Buddha describes what describes an informed, skillful way to be generous. That the offer is there, the opportunity is available to be completely joyful as soon as we have the idea. Like, oh, it'd be really nice to invite so and so over for lunch, or it would be really nice to send a card to just the thought coming to us is the potential for us to rejoice and feel very joyful. And think about it. If you've ever planned a surprise party for someone, how exciting it is. There's a lot of joy in the thought and the planning and the intention of being generous, being practicing hospitality. And then when you're doing it, when you're being generous, when the act has, come to fruition and you're in the middle of it, when you're, to be blunt, like when you're writing that check or whatever, when you're giving that ride to that person, another chance to just feel great. This is the Buddha's teachings. He wants us to feel happy. He wants us to feel good about ourselves. He wants us to realize the potential beauty of a human life lived well. And then after, there's many instructions about bringing it back up to mind, recollecting it. And it's lovely if you can really almost like taking a mental picture of, someone's face when you've done something or given something or said something, or just taking stock, taking a mental picture, and then having a Rolodex of your own generosity. Because the Buddha says that this is another tool in our belt of well-being, that when we're feeling discouraged, when we're feeling overwhelmed, this is a possible, we could open this door and send the mind there and get some sense of insanity, when things seem insane, and some sense of, I'm okay. I can do this. I can meet this. I've got a whole repertoire um, of wise, kind things that I've done that are generous. And is it perfect? No. my generosity is not perfect. Myself is in there, right? I'm thinking, oh, they'll think I'm really great, or oh, they're going to be so, these things are there. It's always a cocktail, but we can focus on the part that's very beautiful, and that will expand, and the selfishy parts, they'll wither away because they don't get any water, they don't get any airtime. I have a very good friend from my oldest friend from childhood. And, we grew up in the west side of Vancouver, and just this crazy thing happened with the real estate. So her mother sold the house she grew up in for like absurd amount of money. And she's inherited quite a bit of money. Her mother passed away about a year and a half ago. And my friend is like, it's almost like a part-time job how generous she's being, and all the very playful, imaginative ways that she's figuring out to be generous. Like, people on the hallway of the condo that she lives in, or a woman she barely knows is taking a trip. Janet loves where she's going and has helped her planning the trip. And then Janet's like, oh, and if I gave her, X amount of money, that would be just such a better trip, and she just gives her a card, this kind of thing. Just and many friends of hers that are just not as well off. She's supporting them in different ways, you know, and supporting them to support their children in different ways. It's extremely beautiful. But what's very beautiful is her. It's her face. It's her face when she tells me some of these plans, and when she works it out, and then when she reports what happened, she's just understanding this part of the Buddha's wisdom, that generosity is very beautiful and it feels amazing. And she's experiencing that, which is really, it's just like this, like watching a movie about what the Buddha said about generosity. Like, it's so true. And I think there's one other part of generosity. I want to say two more things about generosity. See the restraint I'm having. One is that there are so many ways to be generous that don't involve money. I mean, I've given an example of my friend, and this is often where we go. And I think that's just emblematic of our culture. So money focused and materialistic, but there are so many ways to be generous. I mean, the Buddha with dishwater. Um, we can be generous, with, of course, with our time, with our skills, with our energy, with our friendship, with our listening, with our understanding, with our forgiveness, with with our with even our own resources, like our own network of friends. Uh, oh, I know someone who understands that part of technology, because I certainly don't. And, put people in touch. There's so many ways to be generous. I think one of the biggest ways that we can be generous is our listening. All of us can do this. And the other thing about generosity that I want to talk about is being generous with giving others the opportunity to be generous. And this is something we're very, very weak in our culture. That we can lift up and assign more value to needing help, assign more value to asking for help, and understand that this, in the whole network of our interconnectedness, this is paving the way and opening the door for others to be generous and to experience that incredible uplift and growth. Brene Brown, brilliant, brilliant understander, sorry, of the human heart and the human mind. That's a sign I should stop talking about generosity. She has an anatomy of trust And generosity is linked to trust. And when we allow people to help us, see us in our vulnerability, see us in our need, we are deepening trust, and we're building it. So her acronym for trust is braiding, and I'm not going to go into it. That's another talk. But the last word is generosity, the G. Allowing others to be generous and experiencing that reciprocity in relationship. I experienced this personally unexpectedly when I left my lay life to be a nun. And I had stayed in lay life longer than I wanted to because my father was ill, um and I just wanted yeah, it was clear to stay. And then after he passed away, then I wanted to go. And I was leaving two young adult children and my mother, who was 86 at the time. And it was very hard for all of us. But what was unexpected for me was it actually gave them the opportunity to be generous in just letting me go and letting me do this thing that they did not understand at all and came at a huge price for them personally. And it was extremely hard for my mom. And, um, and it was a quick turnaround for her that she just was like thinking about herself and she was so sad. And then after reflection, she was like, she just told me, you go, you do what you need to do in your life. For goodness sakes, you're 50 years old, you know, and I did. And, unbeknownst to us, she died 16 months later. And I was with her the last 3 days of her life, and it was a very, very beautiful death. And I think easier for her because she'd done this huge letting go, very deliberately, very consciously, it really in preparation. And so then the last part of the letting go, she had practice, she had confidence about it, and it was very smooth and very beautiful, giving others the opportunity to be generous, and they benefit, and then of course we benefit. Generosity and offering help to relatives and kin and acting in ways that leave no blame. This quality of non-regret. Uh, I've talked about it several times. The Buddha talks about it, that this is in the cascade of well-being. This is in the the waterfall of just uh, being more and more happy and more at peace and at ease. In the numerical discourses in the Book of Elevens, the first couple of suttas describe this, that there's no need to think about, lifting up the heart or feeling good when non-regret's there. When there's non-regret, there's just this feeling. We've had that experience where we've had a conversation, or we've had a situation where we really kept it together. We really took the high road, and then you have this clear conscience. And it kind of doesn't matter the outcome of that situation because you took care of your own heart and you have a clear conscience. I can remember one night it was pouring rain in Vancouver, and my someone needed something, one of my kids, that oh, I need my bus pass, and it's like all the stores are sold out now. And anyway, I'm driving around anyway, I I locked my keys in the car. It was pouring rain. And this was something I didn't even think I had to do. And that particular night, I kept it together, and it was amazing. Uh, It, it just, and I knew as it was happening, like, oh, I could go this way and I'm going this way. And I'm problem solving, and then it was, I was soaking wet, but I got home and I felt okay. It was there, that was then it was done. when we don't keep it together, then the situation resolves, but then we have all this, toxic waste dump site cleanup project. We've all had that too. So this is what the Buddha is saying, and sometimes, if we understand this instruction of the Buddha, even that can be a little bit more motivation of like, I want to keep it together here, even though this seems like I do have the 3-year-old inside who wants to just lie down on the floor and scream and go, somebody give me a hug. That can be there too. You can care for that, or realize, I'll care for that later. I've said enough, I think. I want to go on and talk about the next verse in this Mangala Sutta, which is being steadfast and restraint and shunning evil ways, avoiding intoxicants that dull the mind, and heedfulness in all things that arise. So this word restraint is not, a super popular word. I mean, I start thinking of someone in a straitjacket, strapped to a gurney in a mental institution. But I don't mean to plant that in your mind. A word that works better for me is protection. And you could translate the Pali, guarding, protecting, restraining. And honestly, the situation I described is about protecting. It is about protecting someone from causing harm to themselves or harm to someone else. Protecting. And so the Buddha talks about, we have these senses and we live in the sensory world. And he uses the word impingement. And I don't know if you've had that experience of just sensory overload, sensory impingement. Different people will have it in different situations. Somebody might have it going to the mall, just those fluorescent lights and all the people some people might have it in a rock concert setting. There are many ways that I'm hoping we can tap into. Yeah, there is a way that sensory data impinges on us and drains us. It sucks. It sucks our attention and it sucks our energy. And so this is what the Buddha is talking about. Really being honest about that and understanding, oh, there's ways that I can protect myself. Um, and and guard, um, keep tallies on my own energy and my own um, capacity, and not, many of us, I think, have lived lives where we've just, grinned and bared it and like pushed on through. And the Buddha's proposing that there's occasions when that has to happen. It's an emergency. And yeah, you're up till 3 in the morning and you're at the emergency room. These situations happen. But for the most part, we can uh, get more honest about our own capacity and pace our lives and pace our social engagements that match. And then we can have a life that's more even keel. And another aspect of this protecting the senses, is to take the Buddha's teachings to heart and realize that there's quite a big difference between pleasant sense experience, pleasant sense contact, and true happiness and peace. Sometimes these things come together, but not always. And it behooves us, and it will help us in our own lives and in our own development to really hone in on pleasant sense experiences and unpack them, tease them apart. This this is a pleasant sense experience. And it's not, it doesn't make a great deal of meaning to my life and fill me. I had a I had an office mate who uh, you know would order some lunch and go get it and then literally sit down at her desk and go, now I'm happy. And that's quite an overt example, but I think many of us, have not examined this area of our life as much as we could that would help us protecting the senses and teasing out, the sense object from the craving and the sense desire. And then start to realize, oh, I've put um, these qualities on this sense object that really aren't there. I'm bringing them with my ideas about this or my memories. It just will help us to understand our own our own minds much better, to start to get more granular in examining these things and realize, oh, a lot of what I think is, fun or exciting or like helps me get through the day, it's not actually this particular sense object or sense experience. It's all of my ideas about it and my planning it and et cetera, et cetera. And this takes honesty, uh, but we can do it. And then we will have much more mastery and much more agency in our own lives and not be just jerked around so much by unexamined craving, which will never deliver what it's advertising. And the last couple of lines of this second stanza about right action are avoiding intoxicants that dull the mind and heedfulness in all things that arise, which brings us specifically to the precepts about right action. And there's 5 precepts that the Buddha lays out for people living a lay life. And they are not intentionally taking the life of any living being, not taking what's not given, and killing and stealing. And then the third one is about our sexual relationships, our sexual encounters, our sexual energy, and to not cause harm with it, not misuse our sexual energy. And it's really the first 2 precepts in the sexual area of our lives, that I'm not going to cause harm and I'm not going to take what's not given. It needs to be consensual, and this person that I'm going to have a sexual encounter with needs to be available, free of any other entanglement. It's just very beautiful what the Buddha says, and nothing about what gender, any of that. It just don't cause harm and don't take what's not given. This is very, very helpful and realistic and beautiful. And then the fourth is to not lie. And then the fifth is the one that's being talked about here, avoiding intoxicants that dull the mind. And the fifth precept is to not take intoxicants. Sometimes in certain Buddhist circles, this gets reworded to be similar to the third precept about our sexual energy, which is basically not to misuse intoxicants. But the Buddha actually said, don't use intoxicants. Why? Because it dulls the mind. It's going the exact opposite direction of all the ways that we're trying to head, to be more attentive, more mindful, more present, more aware. I want to say three things about this idea of just making a decision. Okay, I will not drink. This alcohol gets the big social pass in our society. And the first is Ajahn Nisabo talks about this. Ajahn Nisabo from Clear Mountain, that it can be he calls it the white flag of surrender, that you just commit. You just decide, the Buddha said it, that's what I'm going to do. And, for some, and thinking in this way, this idea of, well, it's just one glass of wine. Exactly. It's just one glass of wine, so don't drink it. That's the white flag of surrender. If it's just this trifling thing, it's just one glass, it's just a beer. I just have a beer after the soccer game. Well, just don't. If that's your attachment to it, well, just stop. I mean, what a beautiful white flag of surrender. Just giving yourself over to following the Buddha's teachings. For some of us, it's not just a glass of wine, myself included. A huge area um, of unskillfulness in my own life. I come from a long lineage of alcoholics and grew up in an alcoholic home. And, I have a nephew who talks about the language of love in our family is wine. Yeah, and it is. Everything is around drinking. And all of the most unskillful things I've done in my life as a daughter, as a friend, as a parent, I had been drinking. Across the board, sadly. And so if it's not just a glass of wine for you, um, that much more reason to uh, to go in the direction of stopping. And if it is just a glass of wine for you, this is the second thing. The second point, I think, is that uh, it can be a beautiful act of solidarity, very conscious, deliberate act of solidarity. If it's just a glass of wine for you, just a beer, if you make a commitment to follow the Buddha's teachings and take the 5 precepts and not take intoxicants, this is such a beautiful, you're becoming an ally. You're becoming an ally for people like me and other people, that it's not just a glass of wine. It's terrible havoc in lives. The damage done by alcohol is exorbitant. And so it's a beautiful act of solidarity. It's not a problem for me, but it's a problem for many, many people. And just in solidarity to them, I'm not going to drink. And how beautiful if we had more and more examples of people that just don't drink and they still have beautiful connections. They still have a lot of fun. They still, have lots and lots of happiness and joy and excitement in their life, and they're not drinking. And they're doing it out of solidarity. Very, very beautiful. And the last thing, it's really not a separate thing. It links to these two, and it's just this idea of um, clarity, this bright, clear line. I'm not gonna drink. I'm not, and what happens when we follow these bright, clear lines of these are the precepts, uh, is it frees up all this mental space. If it's wishy-washy, like, well, I'll drink in these settings and I'll just have a glass, oh, I'll just have a little bit more, like there's all this thinking about it. Should I have a beer? Should I have a non-alcoholic beer? Like, just don't do it. Just have some ginger ale. Like, just don't have alcohol. It's these, I think of the runway and the airplane, and that person guiding the plane in. Like, it's these bright, bright, clear lines. And um, I will say, if things get worse in our society, which could very, very well happen. If we have bright, clear ethical lines, this will serve us so much. Like it's not debatable. These are things I don't do. And and this will serve us. I mean, when you read about the Russian Gulag, when you read about the Nazi concentration camps, many of the people that lived, it was because they had some ethical lines to land on and to fall back on. They had some faith. So, what a great note to end on. If things get worse, no, it's really true. Yeah. So I'll end there.
Andamayandamagataya sadhu karandaramase. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
So I'd love to invite